No, I'll try to keep my questions short so Randy can ask some questions. Um, you know, I think there's general agreement across all of us that coercion in any form is wrong and should be unacceptable. Um, you know, whether it's done at the population level or whether it's done at the individual level, coercing someone to do something that is not what they want to do, you know, is just a basic fundamental principle. Um, and the opposite of coercion is how do you empower people to, you know, be strong, be able to make their own decisions, be able to stand up to make their own decisions, to have the freedoms to make their own decisions. And you know, the subject of this hearing goes to the most basic of fundamental freedoms: control over your body, control over making the decisions that are most sacred to you, control over your reproductive freedom. So, you know, I think all of us are unanimous that any sex-selective practices are, you know, are heinous in how they're put out there, and certainly we should, as an institution, do what we can to minimize sex-selective practices across the world. But these are complicated issues that have complicated roots. I think Dr. Connolly painted out some of the historical background. You know, Ms. Dutt, you know, talked about where we are today, and these are issues that, you know, are incredibly complex, that require local solutions, that require solutions that are homegrown, and whatever we can do as an institution to help empower that. You know, let me ask Ms. Dutt a question. You did point out a number of the root causes and the complexity of why gender discrimination, why discrimination against women and girls in India is so prevalent and so complex. Given your expertise in this area, can you speak about some of the best practices that are homegrown in India? You know, you touched on your program, but those practices that, you know, are empowering women, that are, you know, providing reproductive health services to them, and, you know, really kind of from the ground up, that are in India.
So in terms of some of the lessons learned, and I will also ask Sabu to weigh in because he's done so much work in this area as well. I think that the best results really emerge from programs that involve the local community in making the program decisions and in making sure that the most marginalized amongst the groups have access to those services. I think that the other thing that's very important is that you have to take a rights-based approach to providing services to women. If you merely look at it as a health practice without actually looking at the underlying issues that may enable or prevent a woman from even being able to go to the doctor. I mean, you can't just set up a clinic without looking at the factors that enable women and girls to visit the clinic in the first place. So it's those kinds of solutions that really take into account the entire community and also bring in multiple stakeholders. Let me give you another example. One of the campaigns that we did a few years ago was called Ring the Bell, which challenged domestic violence by engaging men and boys to become part of the solution. So we tried to shift men and boys' engagement, simply being seen as perpetrators, to saying, listen, you have a responsibility to be a part of the solution. And that reframing of the issue has led to a very different kind of conversation around domestic violence in the states in which we've been working. We've also seen a 15 to 20% increase in reporting on domestic violence and an increase in awareness about the act as a result of taking a broader stakeholder approach. In our work on early marriage in Bihar and Jharkhand, we've just launched a campaign where we are really talking to the fathers, because what we've discovered is that they're the ones who are making the decisions around when their girls and when young women get married. And we're having a lot of success in engaging fathers to come to the table and say, we are the ones who have to start making some of these differences in order to move forward.
Dr. George, let me ask you a question. You touched on the history of some of the laws that India has enacted. What do you think the Indian government has done well? And then conversely, what are the things that you would suggest the Indian government should be doing?
Thank you, Mr. Bera. As a doctor and as an Indian, and I think you should look at the role of the medical profession in our country. Since they're so organized and so powerful, they tend to put a lot of pressure on the government. So where, those of us who are campaigning against the misuse of the medical ethics and technology, etc., have, like in the case of Maharashtra, there's been quite an impact there because the laws are upheld. So we cannot give up on the judicial systems and this thing. It's a very slow process. I spent a significant amount of time in the courts. I mean, 3rd of September, I was there in the Supreme Court. Now, 17th I'm missing because I'm just taking a few days to go back home. So what I'm trying to say is that, yeah, laws make a difference, just like what Malika said. Today was the conviction of the people who were involved in the December rape. Now, in that case, there is a public outrage in the country today that rape is unacceptable. But we do not see sex selection as a crime. So therefore, yes, sorry.
I was just going to say, so just to make sure I'm hearing this correct, I was just in India a few weeks ago when there was another rape case in Mumbai. And you saw this huge outcry of how this is unacceptable. Is it accurate then you're not seeing that same level of public outrage on sex selection?
Yes, sir. We have made some progress in terms of seeing this as an issue of, till 2001, there was not even much concern about the problem of sex selection. Then when the results of the census came out, we did see. So there is some discourse, and in areas like Punjab, Haryana, etc., which has been very badly affected, like we are looking at ratios of 700s, we have much more discourse. But what we are frightened is the rest of the country, have to follow reaching these levels before the society responds.
Would you suggest that's a starting point, though, that actually engaging the public, creating this public outrage or this public, either one of you, is that the starting point where the public actually gets engaged and said, this is unacceptable?
I think that's a very critical point. I think that we have to look at multiple intervention points. I think the law is very important. Implementing the law is very important. But certainly creating public outrage is a critical piece of the story. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Breakthrough believes in a culture change approach. And so we are in the process of testing different communication routes and are looking to actually launch a campaign that is India's quest for its missing girls, and engaging young people in this sort of massive search where we really begin to question the underlying factors that are leading to this problem in the first place.
Thank you.